Will AI tools come in and make things accurate and quicker? Absolutely. Will AI be both the police and the criminal? Absolutely. The answer to most of the problems is in the distributor's pipe, because that's where everything comes together.
Where is the global song information lookup, and why can't we get at this data?
Like this people spending $100, $200 on TikTok. If you get a little bit of that, literally 10 million times a day, it adds up to more than you can get right now. So
publishing, wow, so many questions. I always felt is the hardest field in the music industry to understand.
100%.
I have the Randall Wixson book somewhere behind me, The Clear and Simple Guide to Music Publishing, and I swear I've read it 3 times. It doesn't really address any of the issues that I'm facing. I'm label managing for Soul Clap Records. We have a BMI and an ASCAP publishing firm. We're trying to take as much, publishing as we can and develop artists on the publishing side so that we can clear these, so we can talk to people like Michael Frick and, find opportunities to place the music and license the music, not just on the master side. And so that's where we're at. And, that kind of, let me share my screen real quick and zoom in, but that kind of brings up some of these very specific questions, and I'll let Olivier jump in when he feels he's got some things. But when I zoom into this, this is kind of the thing I run into all the time, right? So there's a songwriter, right? And if they're a US songwriter, they've set up their own company with ASCAP and BMI. But we want to take publishing on that song. How do we do that? Because let's say there's a single writer, their share is going to be we can't. They've already got this publishing company, right? So we have to sign them to a deal. How does this work, right? They're like Chuck, right? Chuck Fishman, right? Chuck Fishman, BMI, and they set up their own Fishman Songs BMI firm. Now we're releasing the Chuck Fishman song, but we want to take publishing on it. Is that even something that's possible, right? Benson, how would you structure that? Something like that?
Yeah. There's basically 2 hats to wear and 2 hats to discuss. One is the label side, publisher, what their goals are, and then the other side is the artist side. Because you can make both sort of work for the best for themselves, but then there's a middle way to kind of make them sort of work best for both of them together.
Okay.
So ideally, backtracking, in terms of best practices, it would be great that that song that the label puts out has not been registered at the PROs. So where you're starting out fresh, that is always the best. If you have to go back and retroactively change things at the database societies of the world, PROs and CMOs and MLC, it's a little bit harder. Not impossible, but a little harder.
Okay. I'll just interject and say most of the artists that we work with have no idea about publishing, right? So there's probably not going to be a registration. We're going to be aiding them with the registration. And when we talk about dance music, I won't mention the label's name, but I went to a label that had done 0 registrations, and they kept getting notices from ASCAP when they would run their festival. And I said, look, guys, you need to register your whole catalog because you're getting these notifications about your festival. You're missing an opportunity to pay yourselves by getting right with ASCAP and registering your song. So I find this rampant in dance music where the artists don't even know about this side. So let's assume in this instance they have not registered their songs. We can talk about the other cases later.
And one little side note, just to say that the mindset involved in publishing is so different than on a label or record distribution management side. The hat that you have to have on, the hat you have to wear is so different that it's hard for people who are used to working on just promotion, marketing, getting hype, getting records out there, making great records, signing great artists. That's you, right, Olivier? That's so different than okay, I'm just going to grind out these databases and I'm just going to think about this data complexities, and I'll get paid in a year or two, maybe.
Okay.
And that is the setup to do this. And every once in a while, people are like, oh, why don't you start a label? Why don't you start, like just tiptoe over? I'm like, yeah, but it's a totally different staff, a totally different set of processes internally. Like it would be for us, very hard to like just be a label. Like, no, because like we are not in the mentality of, making something big, finding the next big thing and making it big, like, or finding something cool and making it known. So anyway, so that's why, like people like a label, then unless they have a person who's like, yeah, I'm willing to grind this out, it's hard. It's just hard. So, because it's complex and then people are like, it's hard. Anyway, going back to your question. So then assuming that the songs are not registered, the label wants to do it, but the artist does have his own publishing company. Then the best thing to do is to write an LOD, letter of direction, or, ideally you have to, well, first of all, you have to have a written contract with the artist and the label that you're saying, hey, it's cool for me to handle your publishing. That needs to be written. It cannot be verbal. And how you want to structure it, administration, co-publishing, be up to you, but the most efficient is just administration. Why pay for anything, or why take rights that you don't really, yeah, anyway, I think administration is just also what the sign of the times. Unless you give people money, administration is the way to go. Then you sign an administration agreement, and this administration agreement will be a letter of direction for the PRO, which says like in most label instances, it will be very specific. It'll be like, for these songs, I'm giving Soul Clap Records the exclusive administration rights. Here's a list of these songs. Sincerely, me, Chuck, and Chuck's publishing company. So Chuck and Chuck's publishing company both signed this LOD, which is the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Chuck, the label manager, registers the song, you're going to say, Chuck is the original writer, Chuck Publishing is the original publisher, but Soul Clap Records is the 100% administrator. And this is this sort of the chain of title that's very important to keep straight. Why do you want to keep that straight? Because then you're not Soul Clap Record is not the original publisher. The original publisher was Chuck Fishman, publishing company. And B, 5-10 years from now, that writer wants to maybe leave or do something else. But now, if all those songs are registered to SoundClap, it's total pain in the butt to extract those, versus having them in this chain of title. The money will still all flow to you, all the publishing share, and you can then decide whether you say, hey, I'm going to keep 100%, 50%, 75%. That's fine.
Of the publisher share. So right. So like, yeah.
Yeah, that's then however you negotiate with your artist, and then so that is then the best way to set up what's called the chain of title, that the publishing company of the artist is still involved, you are involved, you get the money, and that's the cleanest way of setting it up.
Okay, so now I have this brings all kinds of follow-up questions, right? Because like it just blows my mind that within the back end of BMI or ASCAP, there's no like way to submit these letters of direction, or no way to really reflect who the administrator is. So if I'm making these registrations for Chuck Fishman, songwriter, Chuck Fishman songs, ASCAP, when I'm in the ASCAP backend, I'm going to put in is the sole writer is Chuck Fishman and the publisher is Chuck Fishman song, because there's no way in there to like add in administrator, right? Like there
is.
Okay.
Yeah. You can add the in both instances.
Okay.
Both BMI and ASCAP, you can add. It's basically then says like collections. You put 0, owns 100, collects 0 for Chuck Fishman Publishing, and then you add another administrator.
Okay. So owns. Say that one more time slowly for my ignorant. So
no, owns. Chuck Fishman Publishing owns 100%. And then I think they have different wording both, but it's either collects or
collects
0.
Yeah.
Then you say Soul Clap Records Publishing owns 0, collects 100.
Absolutely. It's so helpful. This has been like on my mind. I've seen it in there, but it's not really like clear what it really
Yeah,
means. And then I guess like this just jumps me
and
over. Go ahead.
and that is then important in this process that you have the IPI numbers correct of
I've
your
got
client's publishing company, of your publishing company, so that and that then goes back, sorry, to another question of what's an authoritative registration.
right.
And if you are registering on behalf of Soul Clap and you've submitted the LOD about Chuck Fishman, then his shares will be authoritative because there's a chain of title and the paperwork connects. If you add a co-writer, let's say Olivier is a co-writer on this song, but it's not administered by you, then that registration, because you did it, a third party, will be non-authoritative. So they're like, well, we don't really know if that's true.
Okay, this is so helpful, but this is the issue I have. There's no, so I'm the metadata expert. I have all the IPIs. I have like all the publisher information that I can get, right? Because sometimes if you're dealing with a foreign writer and they don't supply these things to you, there's no real like global search, right? But I've dug for these things. I've got the data, but how do you file a letter of direction? Because it should seem to me like just here, upload your letter of direction right here with the song registration, right?
Right.
Do I email it to David straight at BMI? Do I need to have my rep? And where am I putting these letters of direction?
So in ASCAP, it's it's great because it's all online. You just go to Message Center, you say submit a new LOD, letter of direction, you write it, IPIs, numbers, ideally even if you want to get extra credit, you put the well, they're not registered yet anyway, but you can, if you're signing people who already have repertoire, you put the ASCAP work IDs next to the works to make it super simple for everybody. But if the songs have not been registered, then you just upload the LOD here with the list of songs that you're going to administer, wait a few days, and then put in your registrations.
Okay.
With BMI, it's the email address is agreement registrations at BMI. I can look that up, but it's sort of an email because the big difference between ASCAP and BMI is ASCAP is doing everything on their website and BMI is an email system. You have different email addresses for different questions. And I mean, God, the turnaround time is, as we know, I mean, LODs maybe 3, 4, 5 months sometimes before you get a reply and you have to follow up a bunch. And then, and it's just, that is not smooth, to say the least.
But you want to get that, you want to get to those authoritative registrations, right? I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah.
Wow. You in just 20 minutes have blown my mind. And I feel stupid for not knowing these things yet. Because everyone comes to me and they're like, well, Chuck's the publishing expert. And I'm like, I mean, I just say, yeah, but sure. Because I want the work, like even just trying to help this one record label that I mentioned that had done no registrations for any of they're an artist-owned label. So I didn't do the whole catalog because I didn't have those contracts or anything. But the main artist who was leading this label, I did all his song registrations. And people come to me and they're like, well, Chuck's the publishing expert, and I'm not. And so these things are not in that book that I mentioned, which I won't say the author's name because I don't want to out the person again.
No, I think it's also interesting if you look online, there's actually not like definite answers about this really nitty-gritty. Just give me the steps, man. Just lay it out 1 through 10. Like, what do I do?
Right.
BMI and ASCAP is not, for whatever reason, but it's not out there.
So trusted group here, sharing an idea that I've been kicking around for a while and laughing about. But I'm doing tons of clearance, right? And advising people similarly to this conversation. I've had this idea for a podcast forever, and it may not be a podcast. Chuck, you're already doing it with this, but I'll throw it into the pot. It's called What Do You Really Think? Right? And there's so many different nuances, right? For buyers and sellers and artists and publishers and everybody involved that I feel like you could do a monthly podcast and have a different person come on and talk about a different scenario, which are not complicated, but I find that if you don't have the context, right? If you lack context, all of these words in the book mean zero, right? And so much of what we do, even our words in the book and splits and definitions, there's no context. When I was learning about, right, sides, right, master and publishing, and mechanicals, until I was like in it, it was just a book, and it was like over my head. And that was when I met Michael. So this is all extremely helpful for me too, because there's so many different nuances here. And when I say, what do you really think, it can go beyond that, right? It can be conversations about publishing too, but we could go hours for each of these little nuanced topics where people would just, and it's not, to me, it's not a panel at South by, right? To me, this is an ongoing thing. And the funny, right, stupid dad joke is, what do you really think? And certainly with quotes of media, Michael, you understand that I can never get the media plan because nobody knows the media plan.
Yeah, no.
So anyway, I digress.
No, totally. I mean,
with media being programmatic now, right, and auction based, they still don't know the media plan.
Yeah, totally. And I think it could be cool. There's a sort of be evergreen episodes, right? Like just be not just like, oh, this week's episode. No, like this is what's being covered, people. Like, let's just, if you have questions about how to do these ASCAP BMI registration and these use cases, listen to this one.
Yep.
Right.
Agree.
Yeah. Right.
What is the media plan exactly?
Michael, I'll let you explain.
So when an advertising firm does a media request for us and like, hey, we want to use your song, Love You So by the King Khan and Barbecue Show, we're going to show it in these TV stations and these shows in these markets, and we're going to basically, it has a full detailed list of where they're going to show the ad. Which when you quote, you need to know if it's going to be TV, radio, what markets, all that good stuff. But more importantly, once it goes about collecting the money, the residuals, you really need the media plan to show you where do I need to look for my pennies. So that's something that the advertising agency creates. Some brands don't share it, period. Like Apple will never tell you where they're running their ads, like never ever. But yeah, that's the media plan.
And it's getting more fractious and more targeted. And as a result, it used to be, we need 1 year broadcast, right? Back in the days of analog, if you will. And then they added YouTube, and it was, oh, can we get YouTube for an extra $2,500?
Yeah.
Like that was the YouTube add-on. And now the value is arguably more in YouTube for a sync, because more people are going to see it there than the broadcast sets, or it's more trackable, if you will. So, and then there's, the stuff that plays in a TV show or through your streaming channel or through your streaming app. There's so many different ways that they serve these ads that it's really hard to tell people where it's going to run.
Yeah. And also sometimes fun thing, which, if you're a rights holder, it's not bad, but sometimes they'll be like, no, we just aired it 2 times and we stopped it. Oh, okay, cool. It didn't resonate or something, or they switched products and be like, okay, you paid for the rights for a year, but okay, cool. But
well, I wanted to thank Mark Lawrence for joining. Mark serves with me on the Association for Electronic Music Board and is joining all the way from Dubai, and is with he's at IMS right now. He's with Sentric Music. So I don't know if you guys all know each other
Greetings, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I think I'm very much at the other end of my day. It's about 8:30 in the evening here, so apologies for any red eyes after travel and conference mode.
12-hour difference exactly to us.
There you go.
That's cool. No.
Yeah.
How is it? How is it over there? What's going on with IMS Dubai?
It's very topical, actually, interestingly enough, because if there's a part of the world that has next to no monetization for nearly everything, it's the MENA region, particularly the UAE, where there's nearly no royalties for nearly everything. And lots of people desperately trying to fix that in different capacities, both either as consultants or independents. And there is the beginning of organization in Dubai and possibly in Saudi itself. But there's lots of well-meaning businesses and talent emerging that can only monetize through export rather than domestic, which is gives them a bit of a handicap when it comes to growing their songwriting talents locally, because the scene is thriving. You know, the energy and the dynamism and the diversity is incredible. And there are gigs, you know, DJ sets, festivals galore, and royalties barely flow. So it's quite an interesting place to be at an interesting time.
Yeah, absolutely right. But the idea is that they'll get that all organized at some point, right? And then there'll be royalties domestically to be earned.
Yes, but it's very relaxed. I mean, there's an absence of government intervention. There's no mandatory licensing. There's no equivalent of a PRO. It's you know, I think a few people I know have been told as rights holders that if you want money from that festival, then you have to do your own deal with that festival for the rights that you have. Now, as we all know, there's rather a lot of rights holders and rather a lot of songs, and that can be quite hard. So
crazy.
I don't know where you would start to negotiate with another festival and how you would identify that your music was played there and adequately negotiate ahead of time. So yeah, that's the kind of situation it is. Fascinating.
That is
I will
fascinating.
know more tomorrow, as I have a panel at 3:00 tomorrow that will discuss it in real time.
Hey, can you give us I'm a little bit familiar with Sentric. Can you just give us the overview? I mean, I kind of know, but I think that'd be helpful for us.
Ooh, I'll give you a very short version. Centric is nearly 20 years old. It started as a university project by the owners, Chris Meehan being the CEO, who both a musician and songwriter, who identified during his degree that there were large numbers of indie bands and touring bands in the UK who rarely joined PRS, but were gigging enough to earn sensible income if they registered their gigs. And so they created an online registration portal for bands to register themselves as songwriters and therefore claim their income, which of course then it meant they had to register the works. And so that went exceedingly well, exceedingly quickly. And what they sought to do was remove the points of friction in the process. So they were like, let's make it go online, so it's easy to do, so you can sign up in a minute or two. Let's let them keep the rights, so there's no transfer of rights. Let's not make it complicated deal-wise, so it's an 80-20 deal, it's standard, there's no negotiation, it is what it is. So it's 28 days, non-exclusive, you own the rights, we'll collect your money while you sleep. And then as time went on, and as the thousands of songwriters grew, that then augmented itself to having some sync, to extending overseas, to doing sub-publishing and administration deals. Then they bought me, they adminned me, and then brought me in to run the electronic team. And then I started pioneering things like advances, and we put a creative team in. So we grew fast, and now we're owned by Believe Distribution. And I think from what was a business of 25 people in 2017, I think it's 125 now, and pushing the tens of millions, if not more. So, so that's the shortest story I think I can give.
Mark, were you involved with the Rattle a little bit in the UK when they were launching?
With who?
The Rattle?
No.
It was an incubator startup. Bobby Bloomfield, no. John Eads, and Sentric could come in a couple of times when I was advising them.
Yeah, no, nothing I came across. I did a 10-year tenure at PRS for my sins in the UK, and then now I'm past 10 years out on the other side of it, kicking PRS merrily from time to time. So yeah. I tend to keep my head down in the electronic music publishing space and let those with bigger brands and more capability than me do the rest of it.
The famous song that comes to mind, of course, is the Nick Waterhouse and Offenbach remix, right?
That's the one.
Nick Kachi, Offenbach versus Nick Waterhouse. Does that track ring a bell? It was like Nick Waterhouse is an LA retro, not soul, but retro guy, and Offenbach is a French DJ duo. And I think on Sentric, it's like that track wasn't so many ads, gazillion ads.
That's the one. It was a fruit machine paying out dimes by the second. So yeah.
So now that we have Mark and who spent time at PRS, I mean, I'm jumping around a lot of questions, but these are all like real world use cases that things come in. And Mark, I was telling Michael Prommer with Defend Music and Michael Frick. Michael, what is your your firm called now? Your In Sync.
No friction music strategy.
No friction, no friction. Which I love the pun on your last name.
Mhm.
A lot of these things are really simply answered questions that I just have in my day as a record label manager who also has publishing companies for the record label. So I sometimes feel like a lot of these are just like ignorant questions. I don't know, ignorant questions or whatever, but there's something I could think of for you, Mark, which would be I have an artist who covered a song by a UK artist that would be Pulp, and the song is Common People. And like, I'm so used to using SongView, which is our, joint search engine between ASCAP and BMI to find, songwriter and publisher information. But in this case, a big band, right? And I can go to Discogs and like look and see who the writers are because I have to enter this into the back end of the distributor to be able to clear the cover. But I can't find the songwriter information because I'm not a member of PRS for music, and I can't get it. So like when you have this instance of you're trying to, I guess that's for all you guys, when you have this instance of trying to find songwriter and publisher information and the song's not a US work, how do you find it? What's the best route to getting that data?
I ask a PRS member. Honestly.
This is like a big artist. This is Pulp. The song is Common People. Like I want to make sure, especially because look, I mean, here's the thing with songwriter information, right? Like, yeah, it may be I forget his name, Jarvis Cocker, right? But it can be like Jarvis Alexander James Cocker. Like this, when you do songwriters in the US, usually their songwriter name is got their middle name, or you don't want to confuse writers because Mark Smith is Mark Smith, right? Like there's 10 Mark Smith. It's probably like Mark Albert Smith. So I want to make sure I have the right data. And okay, I'll ask a PRS member in the future. That's a great, I mean, like I could get that, but I'm just kind of like, where guys, where is the global song information lookup and why can't we get at this data?
It was a 50 million and counting problem around 7 years ago. No, sorry, 17 years ago, I think, and I was in the thick of it at PRS, where the aim was to have the global repertoire database. And we had a slightly excited CEO at the time, and we kept reminding him that it's better to start where you can deliver something than try and boil the ocean and do everything. Unfortunately, they extended the reach of the global repertoire database to involve CSAC, SASM, and various to try and get everybody on board rather than build like an Anglo-American one. So instead of building it and they will come, they asked everyone to come and didn't build it. Is in a nutshell, because it proved to be almost impossible to solve the problem that you just described in any way that didn't need a cast of thousands maintaining data on a daily, if not hourly basis, which is very depressing. But the reality at the time, I'm sure now it would be easier and cheaper to achieve. And there's also a lot less inter-society politics and a lot less friction, to keep the pun going. But nonetheless, that space and place where recordings and works are matched in seamless beauty and people can go and find their single version of truth has yet to appear. Although it probably sits behind Google and it probably sits behind many of the large companies that we know and love, waiting to be unfurled at some point in the future.
I mean,
I love that answer. I love it. Thank you.
There's a Facebook group in this for the Sync community called Sync This. And just every day, people are asking, well, who's got this share now? Who's got this share? I can't find this person. Like, and big songs, catalogs moving around, and like just even like BMI does. Universal doesn't have it. Warner doesn't have it. BMG doesn't have it. Anybody? So,
Mark, and also just to add, sometimes it looks like someone's got it, and we've been on both sides of this, but often the looking side. And it looks like someone's got it, but they don't actually have the rights. But everything looks like they have the rights on the PRS database. So, like a BMG deal that was 25 years long could have finished 10 years ago, but still looked like a live deal.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The cash is going, but they're not paying it on. They're just waiting for someone else to turn up and get it. So they can't represent the rights, but they look like they represent the rights. It's even worse.
Yeah. Mark, can I ask you a dumb question? So with
Such thing.
with the MLC, right? The American MLC situation. Sorry, Mechanical Licensing Collective. If you are a PRS writer who does not have any US publisher or person, and you're just registered with PRS, nobody's getting you the MLC money though, right?
It should do, because
Or is the PRS or is PRS like
if you
registering
have
their
no
songs with the
publisher,
MLC?
then if you have no publisher, then no, because you're not an MCPS member if you're just a PRS member. So if you've joined both as a writer, then yes. But if you've only joined PRS, then no, because your mechanicals aren't being collected anywhere.
Right. And then if you are, then actually the MLS is gonna collect from the MLC for you.
Yeah. So we have many writers who are various degrees of non-member, both PRS or MCPS in our case in the UK or any other society, and we are able to collect as participants in MLC.
No, sorry, I meant not for Sentric, but for if you're just a MC. Oh God, too many acronyms.
If you're an MCPS member, then
MCPS member, but you are just Joe Ryder in the UK. Will MCPS go get your mechanicals from the MLC?
Well, I couldn't be categorical because it's something I wouldn't have looked at for a long time.
Yeah,
I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't, because that's just a data exchange of membership and claim. Right. And MCPS is pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah, because that's something I just thought about. Like, because then, Chuck, to your question, maybe MLC database will be a good one for you to look up, because maybe then that's where Pulp's data is updated. You know,
very good idea, because I find that their data to be like very good for songwriter information. Yes. Now you mentioned MCPS, which I'm assuming is like a UK or European MLC. Am I right?
Mechanical Copyright Protection Society in the UK.
Okay. So they're the analogy to the MLC in some sense in the UK, or can you guys explain what they do?
More Harry Fox, I guess, in terms of its existing reach, but a combo of the two in reality. Yeah, because it's both physical and online.
Okay.
But it's seeded a lot of what it does online to ICE, which of course is pan territory, and what MCPS is a shadow of its former self.
Okay. Well, there's so much more like we're going to learn over the next months, and I'm definitely going to shoot to do one of these in the first week of December, either Wednesday or Thursday. You guys are welcome to join again. I'd love to have you guys part of this community. And Michael, to your point, like we can, you and I can talk about how to focus it, or we could do another, like something in parallel with this. I mean, I'll go back to like some of the things that I run into, like with some of the artists. So Mark, you know that I'm a label manager, but I'm always bringing on these artists and trying to get the publishing side taken care of. So one of the things that I get is like, hey, can I be a songwriter with two different firms if they're like both BMI, right? Like, can I be? And I think we kind of answered this earlier, Michael Prommer. Like, I think it's like it's an administration deal, like. But you could just have two different administration deals, with different publishers, right? And with letters of direction that say which songs belong to which publishers. That seems like the way to handle that, right?
Yeah, totally. So
okay,
like
cool.
People do it all the time, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing too many, so that you can still manage your catalog, because you still need to do that as a songwriter.
Right. And a lot of times I see with songwriters, which is kind of interesting, I want to get your take on, is like a lot of songwriters that haven't gone too deep on publishing, they just got their songwriter IPI from BMI or ASCAP, and they don't have a corresponding firm. So like in that case, when you're doing the song registration, they don't have an equal publisher share. And so I guess you still have to file that letter of direction in that case, right? Like, so now there is no such thing as Chuck Fishman songs. It's just Chuck Fishman writer, one writer, and Soul Clap registering and publishing. But this person doesn't have an equal share publishing firm. You have to. How do you handle that? Because the way it works in ASCAP, you have to have a corresponding publishing firm for every writer.
Well, then it would just be Soul Clap.
Okay.
the
But is
original,
but
then the example I gave earlier was like then the original songwriter, Chuck, original publisher, SoundCloud Publishing,
so
and
right.
also, and then in this case, owns and collects 100%.
And do you have to file a letter of direction in that case?
They're not that picky, but probably to be good,
Yeah.
because just show the paper trail.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
sometimes, and if you're registering like that, they don't ask for it or don't need it. But then eventually, if it's like enough money is getting earned, like it's just good for you to have your paperwork straight too. So
Okay. That's really helpful. I want to like jump through the screen and hug you. I'm going to ask you more and then make sure that we get. I let Olivier ask some pressing ones he has, but the one thing I'm always getting with these people, like these artists, are like, well, I'm already with BMI, and they're like, but now I'm going to sign up for ASCAP, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. So this question number 7, am I allowed to affiliate with more than one PRO in the US? And I mean,
no, you're not.
I've seen people do it
No.
though, all the time.
Yeah,
Or
it's
they,
just super bad. Yeah, like I'm sure there's some trick way you can do it. Back in the 50s, you're allowed to. So if you're looking at like old songs from people, Frank Sinatra songs, and some songs that have like different songs for the same writer will be a different PRO. But nowadays it's not allowed, and you would just mess yourself up doing it. Like
okay.
same as this.
I've heard that advice in the past, and typically what it boils down to is if you're a band, one of you maybe registers ASCAP, the other goes BMI, and then you pool your royalty income, so you're both benefiting from the different surveys. But I had heard that before too, Chuck, from people. I mean, this is like 10 or 15 years ago. Oh, you should register with both, so you collect everything.
No, and then I've seen people do like their freaking aliases as their songwriter IPI. I'm like they're like one artist DCP Boplito. I'm like, that's not your government name. How are you getting away with that? So it's another one. Okay,
I know somebody who's got 3 different songwriter aliases.
and are they registered with the PROs as such?
I haven't done the deep dive on that.
Okay.
But yeah, he's got a bunch of different pseudonyms that he's a writer has.
This must be edge case.
Yeah. And a follow-up question for you, Mark. So one thing that comes up for us is for foreign writers, UK or German or French, that they eventually like, oh, I should become an ASCAP member or a BMI member. And like, I think unless you live here and like a lot of income comes here, it's not really worth it to switch, right? I mean, how do you see it? Or
I think there was one benefit that's like an aggressively obvious benefit, which is if they have significant identified live revenue in the US, because most societies can't, or most publishers can't claim for it for non-BMI members, for instance. So there's a logic where for particular usage types, but if you're kind of Joe Standard songwriter, then the publisher collection is enough. There's not really a benefit to having a US membership in addition to that. But we've definitely had, and then again, you open the door of, because it has to be a very precise discussion. They need to know that there is income from festivals, tours, gigs for that to make sense. And as we know, that's limited to a very small number of venues and tours and gigs. Unlike the rest of Europe, and also the royalties that come from that are typically at a much lower rate than Europe, for instance.
Yeah,
and you have to manage that one with care, and and I guess there's a whole discussion around what level of writer is that. If they're 10,000 a year, does that make any sense? If they're 100,000 a year, does it make some sense? If they're $1 million a year, yeah, go for it because you can get US income quicker. But it's like, at what point does the cost of it and the admin of it make that beneficial?
Yeah.
So I guess semi-personal, semi-professional choice, but But I would say that it's. I don't know. I don't know many, to be honest, from the European side looking the other way, who split their memberships across the Atlantic that are on the sort of 100,000 a year place. It tends to be much larger.
Well,
Calvin Harris was all in for his 4 million advance, you know. But
that brings me to question number 8, which was for US writers. Number 8, I wrote, am I allowed to affiliate with the foreign PRO outside of my BMI or ASCAP membership?
well, I totally would do for my mechanical collections, that's for sure.
No.
So you're saying like, okay, affiliate, like I should affiliate with PRS, or should I let my publishing admin really be collecting? I'm very confused.
But I guess it flows back from, doesn't it? How are you collecting? So back to your unpublished and published, isn't it? They're your two streams of advice, which is individual that's an ASCAP member and doesn't assign publishing to anybody is missing out huge swathes of income around the rest of the world for mechanicals, and so should do something about that. And the do something about that is be published or join a mechanical society. And then you've got your other writer who is published, shouldn't need to worry about it, because as long as they got themselves published by the right company, then that company is a member of performing and mechanical societies, then they should be fine, either through reciprocals or direct memberships. But it's about creating that tree, isn't it, from who am I, how am I collecting, published, yes, no, and then it falls out from there like a decision tree, I think.
Well, I think we're going to make that decision tree, but I think one thing that you said there, our goal is to make that decision tree because we need it. But okay, you know, in my case, I have my own BMI publishing firm, but I assume that it's a publishing admin on top of that like a bigger company that actually is making sure that's collected. I don't think BMI is out like making sure that all those things are happening. They're not collecting the mechanicals. So you need someone on top of BMI, right? You need an admin.
Yeah. So like in our case, we are the rights administrators for hospital records, toolroom records, Shogun Audio, all these kind of labels, Electropose in France. And so they sign and then re-register those works in nearly every society direct around the world, and have direct deals with the likes of TikTok and YouTube and others, Beatport as well, where we get paid directly from Beatport. And then we will do all of the crunching of all of that data and all the chasing and all the nudging and haranguing, and then bring all of that together into accounting for a label like you and say, here it is, pay your people. Or we'll pay you, and we'll do that in two ways. We'll either have a deal that's full service where we provide you with the data for the statements and exactly how much to pay them, or if you've got an accounting system, we'll give you data and money and let you do the rest. But all the society facing bit, that's on us.
Okay, that's so helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, there's companies like Amra that's collecting all the digital Spotify and Apple Music collect royalties directly before paying the local. They circumvented the local PROs.
But that is essentially an online mechanical society ex-US.
Yes, exactly. They're not
no performing, mechanical only. Ex-US, and so we were members of AMRA from the start. We were one of the 4 publishers that were members, because the rest were large writers. We shifted that to SACEM Digital because there's a sort of fight.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so there's AMRA, SACEM Digital, and ICE are the 3 combatants with the most capability, capacity. And it's an arms race between them on how many people they can license, how much data they can manage, how quickly they can pay, how transparent they can make it. So there's a bit of an arms race between the 3. But it was a fundamentally good thing to do, to have fewer companies licensing online mechanicals globally, because it's more like being a distributor where you send a track through a pipe, Labelworks, Symphonic, Believe, ADA, and it goes to Spotify, Apple, blah, blah, blah. And then they pay you for all of those territories and you pay your artists. And so these online mechanical companies make us closer to that. But of course, the data management is, as described earlier, an ever-changing picture, because it's not one recording, one artist. It's multiple writers, multiple versions, all the horrors that you know and hate.
Yeah. Exactly, and that unfortunately is not open to single songwriters, those systems. So
no,
not yet.
That's right. It has to be at scale.
That's behind. You have to be with a publisher, administrator who has access. But
Yeah.
that's what you're missing out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I came into this and during the pandemic, trying to use SongTrust and then finding out that their systems with MusicMark had melted down and that's why registrations weren't happening for like 8 months, 12 months. And I was yelling at them every day. And that's where I first kind of came into this and learning. I'm like, well, it should be easy. I'm just going to use SongTrust and it's going to all work out. And I'm giving them the data. And then to find out that the song registrations weren't even being made because you had this Common Works registration data standard that was being updated and they weren't communicating with each other. That's how I came here. But then we got like a couple minutes left. I've been dominating with Olivier, and I think we're going to be able to do this once a month, if not, biweekly, and just get a lot of things hammered out because I've already learned so much. I'm so thankful for all, the three of you guys for just jumping in like last minute. It was really great. Olivier, I've been talking too much.
How do you see publishing evolving in the next few years when it comes to software, streamlining of the digital supply chain? Do you think it will evolve fast as we saw in distribution, where today digital distribution is pretty much a commodity? It's getting easier and easier. What is the situation with publishing, or it's still very messy?
Publishing business is getting harder and harder. It is not getting easier and easier, and I'm jealous of people who do distribution, where it's just like quote unquote straightforward, 3 databases, blah blah blah. It's out there. But for us, the work is so more complex, and we're in those 80-20 fees sometimes. We're like, wait, it should be the other way around. We have so much work. For us, the digital world, right now we're really big on enforcing brands using our music on Instagram and TikTok without paying for it. Like, you're not allowed to just do a post and put our music to it. That takes a lot of work. And yes, there's income coming in, but it's not something we did 3 years ago. Right now, YouTube shorts that are not caught by the YouTube content ID system is one of our biggest income categories. However, finding YouTube shorts that don't use our music, that are not properly tagged, is very cumbersome and takes a lot of manpower and database finicky. So while it's great, it's great, like it's growing. I think it's going to be a good time for rights holders and publishers. Our work is getting more complex. It's more harder to find it. When people are saying, oh, publishing is just registering at the PROs, I'm like, no, there's so many places that now you need to look for your money, make sure that you get that you have the money flowing the right way. There's so many bad actors that try to upload music that's yours and make it theirs, and like policing gets harder. So while it's good, our work is just gonna get harder. So I just don't see that getting easier. I don't know. I'm not being a downer, but I'm just saying it is getting more complex, harder for outsiders to do, I would think. I don't know. That's my perspective of the next few years, where it's like,
well, my question to that, if I may, Olivier and Michael, is if people licensing things becomes easier, right, and the time frames and the terms become shorter. I don't like the idea of micropayments and royalty-free sync, but if it becomes easier for your average Joe to license and clear something, will that be a positive moving forward? Or again, that we do, it's so complicated that if you don't have the right language, you don't know how to do it. And I have so many clients who are just scared to touch music license, and they'd rather just go to a one-stop royalty-free thing because they don't want to get bitten in the butt at the 11th hour with some sort of, caveat on a license that says, oh, we're on the hook for an extra $50K that we didn't agree to. So
for sure. And I think like if you especially talk about the online platforms like TikTok, commercial music library, YouTube creators library, 2 to 3 years, I'm thinking most publishers and rights holders will be in these big libraries, because there's just no way to catch up with all the people using it illegally. You're losing out so much money. And right now, this hand-to-hand combat for sync licensing is just, it's just not really doable. So
to that point, I have some writers and producers I manage, and we got some direct deals with Meta where they're doing buyouts for their, UGC library. And 10 years ago, artists wouldn't put their real name on there. They'd use a pseudonym. And now it's like, well, these are ending up on the DSPs. You're still retaining your writers, and there's going to be artist attribution if this thing goes viral on that video. So sure, take, the low buyout, and you're making songs every day anyway. So you're saying that majors are just going to move in and put their stuff there for those same rates?
Not for buyouts, but it'll be
no, not for buyouts.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's I would just be surprised if people eventually are not, because it's just not, you're missing out on all the little, like this people spending $100-$200 on TikTok. If you get a little bit of that, literally 10 million times a day, it adds up to more than you can get right now. So I don't know. I mean, because of course the majors, they, that, or like that's again, that whole world TikTok, right? They fired Merlin, and now all the indies are trying to do their TikTok deals, and they're super overloaded, and this whole system is sort of evolving. And yes, while I'm saying like 2 to 3 years, everybody with libraries, but also, I don't know, like there's so many moving pieces. Will TikTok be kicked out of the US? Like probably not, but
it's so weird because like anytime one of those things comes up, it keeps me in business, because then I have artists ask me, I'd like to, like, I have to spend an hour of billable time, like explaining to artists why their songs aren't on TikTok. I'm like, well, let me show you this Billboard article. Let me explain to you what Merlin is. And that stuff kind of keeps me relevant, because they don't even understand why it is. Not that I don't want their music on TikTok. I want their music on TikTok, but if like I need to explain to people why, they need to call me up.
Yeah.
So well, this has been fantastic.
I don't know if we have more time, but Mark, I would like to hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no, we got time. Go ahead.
What do you think about publishing in the next 2 to 3 years? And I'll go on mute. My puppy is having.
That's literally, what's that? Probably now $1 billion question. You know what? It's a horribly, and I don't say this from protection at all. I say this from a heavy dose of bitter experience of 20 years at it. I don't think much is going to change. Now, will AI tools come in and make things accurate and quicker? Absolutely. Will AI be both the police and the criminal? Absolutely. But will everything be basically the same but automated? Absolutely. Will the big get bigger? 100%. Will the niche be an exciting place to be? Definitely. Will it get faster? Almost definitely. But will it be basically, the mechanical copyright is based on making sure that money went from those people that made wax cylinders to the people that made the music. That was the mechanical copyright. That's it's unchanged, and it can't change. The performing right is Sassem's way of paying the guy that was sat in a restaurant who wrote the music that was being played in the corner. That's unchanged. We're talking hundreds of years of unchanged. So the big change for publishing can only come when the rights change, because the entire system is designed around rights that don't work anymore. And nearly every society is underinvested in by the major publishers, who own most of them, who have no interest in accuracy because they are rewarded by market share from those societies that can't be accurate because they're underfunded in. So if you go into the sort of macro terror of it all, until there's an existential threat that says these rights don't work, this doesn't work, change, which 10 years ago we all thought was going to be Google. We thought Google was sitting there with a global repertoire database going, well, you failed, here's mine. And it never happened. It never materialized, which means there mustn't be money in accuracy. Nobody seems to want it apart from the people that want it. So, and that's not the people at the top. So without wanting to sound doom and gloom, because I think that's just a reality check, I think it'll be much of the same that might feel slightly better. But there are positions in the industry with large organizations that are both being rewarded for targeting their teams on and are driven by market share. And until that fundamentally changes, then the deals that get done and the systems that do or don't get invested in and the rights that support it all will probably be very familiar to many people in another 10 years' time.
Olivier, like just some of the issues I have, like I want to get all of the ISWCs for my ISRCs for the label. I cannot do that without doing it manually, like searching each title manually. That's crazy. And don't think the distribution solved. My distributor, who I will not without them will not give me a DDEX feed out of our catalog, which is really problematic because I need that DDEX feed now so I can create this database and have a better catalog management tool. And they will not, they're like, oh, we don't take, and they won't take DDEX. So I can't use technology.
That's why they can't give it.
They can't get it and they can't give it. And they're a major distributor.
Yeah. I mean, we were able to transform the way that we collect on mechanicals via API calls to Spotify, and also the way we work with Beatport. And now, because where we work with, now we're part of Believe, where we also administer labels that are distributed by Believe, the data sharing is remarkable. So we can sign a label today, deliver their rights holder neighboring rights data 20 minutes later all around the world and start collecting. We can pull together a starting point of repertoire for performing a mechanical right registrations, within days of doing a deal, and start to collect from 6 months after a registration, when it used to be 12 to 18 and is often 18 for other publishers. But that's still a lag compared to being a distributor, who are basically paying you within a month after the 3 months of use, right? So we're still dealing with Starlight. We're still collecting money that just shows you how old it is. It's remarkable. So, but I always said when I was at PRS and as I was leaving, that the answer to most of the problems is in the distributor's pipe, because that's where everything comes together. That's where the data comes together. It comes together with the sound recording. It comes together with if you could fix the pipe. Of course, there's lots of pipes, but if you could make the pipe perfect, then you'd have a lot more perfection within all of the rights flow.
And there's the DDEX people, and there's some good minds working on it. They're just grinding that out. Which publishers? That's what we do. We just grind stuff out.
Grind stuff out.
Grind it out.
It's sweaty, gnarly, deep in the mine, just hammering away at the walls
for 0.001 cent. But sometimes it's 0.1 of a cent.
Blinking in the sunlight, full of joy when you unlock a sink.
Yeah.